Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with Technology Executives Club, and I'm really excited to introduce you to Omar Shanti. Hi, Omar. How are
Hello,
you?
everyone. I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Doing well. It's great to talk. Omar has joined our Board of Advisors program, and we really appreciate you doing that. And he is the CTO of a company called Hatchworks AI. So, Omar, we really appreciate you spending your time with us because I've been everybody's going to be excited once they get a sense of knowing you for sure and your background because you actually are working in, gosh, could you know what? I think you need to get into a hotter area, Omar. I think maybe, right?
Yeah, I mean,
You,
I was there when the blockchain wave started,
yeah.
and comparing the sort of buzz and energy in the space then to the buzz and energy now, it sort of feels like I get a do-over. I get to attack this wave a little bit more aggressively. Gen AI and blockchain, similar technologies in their relationship to the hype cycle, very different in their histories and their use cases. In a lot of ways, Gen AI sort of delivers on the hype that blockchain sort of could not. Maybe we can get into that in our
Oh,
conversation, Alex. But
that's kind of
it's a hot
interesting.
space for sure.
God, it's so funny you brought the blockchain up because I was one of those guys that was like, oh my God, that's the coolest thing. And I'm not as advanced as you. I don't really understand the core technology, but I was reading about it and thinking, oh, if I could just make NFTs and I would be joking around with my son, it's like, oh, we got to do NFTs for this and NFTs for that. And that it's funny you mentioned that because it did feel like it kind of went away, but of course it didn't because behind the scenes it's still there and it's still maturing and it's still growing. And yes, I have some crypto. I haven't gone crazy with it. I wish I did early on, but it's still fundamentally there, isn't it?
It's fundamentally there. It won't be going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people who are treating it as a financial asset, who have got an interest in letting it grow. Other
yeah,
people who are using it as a means to build tools, whether it's digital native assets such as NFTs or ledgers that represent something in the world. I know there's people who are still experimenting with things like tokenizing the deed of your home or the deed of your car, a painting, so that you can get provenance tracked via the blockchain's lineage and so on. So a lot of exciting stuff still happening in the space. Where I'm a little bit quicker than most to sort of draw the line
yeah.
is blockchain comes in the history of databases, and a
Got
lot of
you.
the use cases can just be built with a standard database.
Yeah, why do you need this new technology to do that? But it is interesting to me. I don't want to spend too much time on it because we're really going to be focused more on AI and your work in AI. But it is interesting as a core background. So why don't we do this? What I like to do in these things is talk a little about your background and then lessons learned and some of the challenges that you figured out, what excites you, the kinds of things you're working on, because you're working on some really cool stuff for a lot of great customers actually already. You've been doing that already. So let's start with that if that's okay with you. I'll just at any time you want to bring something up, just tell me because I'm just excited to just share this with the community. So I'm going to go back. And by the way, if I look over here, forgive me, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile here, which anybody can look at. And if you're watching this, you see a link below to say hi. Say hi to Omar. Click on it and say hi. Hey, Omar, let's connect. I just watched your video. So, anyways, I see that first. I'm going to start. Usually I'll interview if they're like older, like my age. I'm like, we'll go back. We'll go way back to the beginning. It's not that far here. But I'll tell you, you're in a category I call a very fast riser, because I can see from you, even when you were at Northwestern, and congrats on Northwestern. I mean, I can see you had a great career just starting off there. You were on the dean's list, the high honor roll, and also what's interesting to me when I started studying that background, and everybody can just look at it, BS in computer science and a BA in economics. So you did this joint degree, which is very unusual. I find a lot of people that I interview, by the way, they go back and get an MBA or whatever, where they figure, oh, I need to understand business. But I think, I'm guessing that really helped you because you, once you started working, you really started working with enterprise companies almost right away. And I'm guessing that core uh, background really helped you understand how businesses work. Am I right? Did that help?
Absolutely. Yeah. Every company is an AI and data company these days. AI
Yeah.
and data is sort of a tool rather than something that really gives you vision per se. You can analyze trends within the space so that you understand what kind of functionalities will be available in the future. But you really need to fall back on another skill set to understand how to best apply that tool. And that's what I hope to get out of economics. Similar things can be said about finance. Finance is a tool within every org and
Yeah.
so on. But ultimately, what economics sort of gives you is the skill set to identify niches, to identify untapped markets that you can go into, and to identify how to allocate scarce resources. And in this case, in undergrad, my sort of focus was on growth economics, economics of the third world. But a lot of the tools that I used there, learning about things like risk, learning about aversion, about
Uh-huh.
calculating return on investment, they've got a direct use in the way that I've been able to apply AI and data and computer science in my consulting world. So really the idea was pair both of them together so that I know how to build something and I know also what to build and how to sort of build a business case around that.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting. So it really helped you a lot. And I like, in terms of lessons learned, I mean, being able to understand how business works. I mean, we're in the business world. If you're going to use this technology for business, you got to understand how the businesses work. And that obviously paid off for you. I mean, if I look at just when you were there, even look at your honors and awards, you actually did some really good work right away. And then you started off, um, I see you like to write and you did some writing early on, but then you started off and you went and all of a sudden you were running a lab at a company called Kin and Carta. Were they always Kin and Carta when you were there, or was it Solstice that when then they made the change? It's now called Kin and Carta. Did, did you
That's
start?
correct.
Were you there when they were Solstice, or did you jump in once they were already Kin and Carta?
I
I'm
was
just
there
curious.
when they were Solstice, and I
Yeah.
started the conversation when they were Solstice Mobile. So I've lived through
Oh,
four
got you.
different brand changes there, and yeah,
And
it's definitely been a journey. That's sort of where I cut my teeth, and that labs experience was sort of my that was my comeuppance in a way. So
yeah.
I arrived at Kin and Carta. It's a consulting company as well. I was on the bench wondering how do I sort of get visibility? How do I differentiate myself? I'm not able to be cast on a project. I don't want to just waste my time. I've got this idea. I've been studying blockchain on my spare time. Why don't I send out a message with a proposal? So I proposed, hey, everyone, I want to build this cool blockchain based social payment system, just like
Oh,
Venmo or just like Twitter, except every single item in the newsfeed is a peer to peer payment, where that payment is this internal cryptocurrency that you can then redeem for swag. And you pay people on the basis of them doing good work. So it's a kudos system. And I had this idea to call it Solstice Coin. And so I sent a message to the water cooler. I was like, everyone, drop what you're doing. Try to get time off of your projects. Come join. People are kind of scratching their heads like, who the hell is this guy? Who's this kid? Like, who's sponsoring this initiative? And I had no answers. So I started sort of figuring out what I needed to at the
uh-huh.
moment. And then I realized that the word for that is agile delivery. And very quickly, I sort of became the architect and the tech lead of that project. And within 2 years, we had not only gone to production, but spun off 2 or 3 different projects based on it. And the app had hit 30,000 transactions. So because I sort of created this organic bottom up approach to labs, um, they said, well, Omar, why don't you go in and run labs? And so I worked with a really fantastic mentor called Chris Wyland, who is the director
Uh-huh.
of labs. He
Yeah.
brought me on as the labs lead, and we sort of delegated it where he would deal for the most part with strategy. I would deal with implementation, sort of the incubation part
Yeah.
of labs. And yeah, I'll pause there, but a lot to talk about on the labs front.
Yeah, well, what's interesting to me is in the labs, you actually did a lot of good work in a lot of interesting areas. You mentioned blockchain, but I know that you already had a background in AI and learning and things like that. Then you went into to become a technical principal, and you did that for, gosh, 6 years. And if I look at your project list, blockchain, MLOps, generative AI, you were founding member and lead of the practice areas for blockchain, ML ops, and generative AI. And if I look at your background, I don't see this a lot, by the way, when I look at backgrounds, is actual projects. actually
Yeah.
things you've got done. Equip data producers across the manufacturing with self-service tools, enabled voice ordering in the drive through tens of thousands of calls in a call center using generational AI. Uh, and you were already using GPT back then before we all even knew it was around. Cut down the value on AI modeling. So you've had a lot of real life experience with these technologies already, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. What sort of differentiated me from my peers at Kin and Corda was because of my lab's upbringing, I was sort of the lead of our rapid experimentation sort
Uh,
of methodology. So whenever a POC comes in or something that is relatively unknown, I was sort of one of the first people on people's mind. And as a result, I got to dabble in a lot of things, which is the beauty of consultancy, right? That you're
yeah,
always working on new technology or you're always working on new challenges, ideally with new technology, a lot of times with enterprise and ancient technology. But when you
yeah,
factor in the emerging tech emphasis that I had, I was more or less always dealing with newer technologies. Within the field of AI, you were mentioning conversational UX. Yeah, that was
yeah,
something that I actually was doing in undergrad as well. So within computer science, my focus was on artificial intelligence. And I specifically enjoyed the sort of semantic processes behind language. So
really.
I gravitated naturally to natural language processing. At that point in time, there weren't as many tools in the ecosystem, so it was a lot more of a manual process. So learning how the sausage is made and then learning how to basically just use these big machines that sort of simplify the process for you. I think that was a bit of a differentiator in my career.
That's
And
really interesting. Yeah.
and just in that vein, similarly, my AI focus in college was for the most part on the mathematical level, and it was I was really blessed because I had some really great scholars there who sort of mentored me. I'm going to shout out two if that's okay. I
Yeah,
believe
go
both
ahead.
are still based in Chicago. There's Professor Reza Borhani and Professor Jeremy Watt. Both of them published two editions of a really seminal textbook that I think any aspiring data scientist should check out. It's called ML Refined, Machine Learning Refined. And what's amazing about that book, Alex, is from basic calculus and linear algebra, they teach you the building blocks, which you can use to build all the way up to like the deepest depths of deep learning. And they
That's
haven't
interesting.
continued into GPTs and transformers quite yet. Those developments happened after they published, I believe, but
Uh,
they're certainly experts that I owe a lot to.
that's nice of you to mention them in their book. So then you moved to Hatchworks, which is where you are now. And again, I've interviewed a number of people that were what I call fast risers early on in their career, but you're actually in that stage. They're actually been around for a number of years, Hatchworks, and it's a pretty substantial company already. I think you mentioned there's 100 or so, a couple hundred people in the company that are already on the team.
That's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
200 people. We've been around since 2016. Very solid business proposition in our nearshore capabilities. And these
Uh,
days, with the shift to generative AI, it's about how we can use generative AI in the process of building software, whether it's AI software or traditional APIs, websites, etc., so that we can get better outcomes faster and smarter for our clients.
so you have this concept, you have a couple concepts that you mentioned to me that I thought was very interesting. Generative driven development, as well as data science, MLOps, data architecture at scale. I mean, those are some pretty big concepts. I mean, tell us a little about that. I mean, how did you get involved in this? Because it seems like you keep evolving into these bigger and bigger areas that can help people, especially the viewers.
Yeah, so I'd love for the viewers to imagine a pyramid. Um,
Okay.
and divide that pyramid horizontally so that you've got four or yeah, let's say four sections.
Uh,
Um, Only the top section, the smallest tip of the iceberg, is what we would call AI, whether classical AI or generative AI.
yep.
Um, as you go down the stack, it's about how you take AI and you productionize it. So how you take AI and then figure out the infrastructure that it runs on, the training pipeline, how to get that going. Underneath that layer, you have the data ops layer, which is how you get data ready and prepared for you to actually do your AI and model training on it. And then as you go one level deeper, it's that data collection tier where you actually get your data from your end users, from strategic acquisitions, from wherever you get it from, and pipe it in without actually damaging the quality, the integrity, or the cleansing, or the the integrity, the freshness, the cleanliness, and so on and so forth. So
Mhm.
um, my career has been sort of moving down that pyramid. In undergrad, I focused on AI, and then I did not really want to settle for being an AI person who couldn't self-serve to data. I didn't want to just submit a request to get data and then hopefully get that data in a few
Yeah,
weeks' time. I wanted to be able to roll up my sleeves, go to the source, get data, but also build a process for others to do the same as well. So that's where sort of self-serve enterprise data architecture comes in. Self-serve could be the BI people who are running dashboards. So an enterprise might be looking to adopt sort of data-driven decision making across the stack. Could also just be a data scientist who's looking to build and tweak their newest model. Whoever the persona is, if we can enable more self-service to that data, we can enable better business outcomes, and that's sort of what's been motivating my shift from data science down to data ops.
that's really interesting. It's really interesting because I have heard when I hear about AI, I don't always hear I hear more about process. Machine learning. We're going to have this process. We're going to automate this process. But you're talking about enterprise level KPIs and you actually were just talking about departmental level, like helping people at the department improve their data architecture and their ability to make decisions. Is that what I'm hearing?
So the truth is, I am talking about processes. So right
Uh,
now, when any persona in the company needs data, they're going to go to either a BI analyst or to someone who actually manages that data. If you go to
uh,
the BI analyst might need to go to the data warehouse person. The warehouse person might not have that data, so they need to go to the application engineer. And so there's all kinds of humans in the loop. And as you go from A all the way down to Z, you end up losing some crucial context around what the demand is and what the data means.
yeah.
So the customer who understands what the demand is and the producer understands what the data means. And what I'm hoping to do is bridge that gap
Oh,
by
that's
investing
interesting.
in sort of enterprise data architecture around self-service so that customers can say, here's my problem. I know vaguely what data I need. Let me go through this process to identify where that data lives. And if you can tap on a generative AI interface, you can be in conversation with that data without needing anyone without needing anyone to get you that data for you or create a dashboard. You can just start a conversation and explore that data textually.
That's a big vision. Now, where does AI, what role does AI play in solving that particular challenge? Because that seems like a pretty big challenge that you're trying that you're helping people with already.
It is a big challenge and it is a bold vision. It's one that
Yeah.
people are actively working towards, but one that will
Uh,
be sort of delivered iteratively. I think the narrative or sort of where I'm coming from, there's been this development in the field of data and analytics historically,
uh,
where we've gone from an architecture with one warehouse to an architecture with a lake and then a warehouse and then marts to now the architecture of data meshes. And the trend there is to decentralize. So I'm looking to tap into that sense of decentralizing by rather than creating a dependency on other teams who've got a specialized expertise that only they can apply,
uh-huh.
let's empower those teams to create self-service tools that others can apply wherever they are. So the team that manages the CRM is now given a way for them to manage their data and ingest it into this analytical layer. Team that manages application databases, they're also given this tool. And that way, the team who is sort of manages the data warehouse historically or the analytical layer historically are now equipping the sort of the team who actually manages data, or all of the teams who manage data, with the self-service tools that they need so that they can publish their own data. That's sort of one of the guiding principles behind this concept of the data mesh. AI can help in a few places. Firstly, I want to say that it's not just technology, it's people and processes, but AI
Yeah.
can sort of be ingrained into both of those things as well. By equipping people with AI, you can sort of supercharge them so that they can take manual tasks right now, such as data deduplication, and they can use more or less proprietary off-the-shelf solutions, such as the one that we're going to be presenting in the lab soon at
Oh,
Hatchworks. And you can do master data management with a fraction of the time. And then in terms of the processes, if you're basically building data pipelines or something like that, ultimately you can use generative AI to sort of augment things by adding in additional metadata, adding in some semantic meaning or so on, documenting the data, which is something that teams typically leave for the last minute as an afterthought. And then on the pure technology play, once you've got all of your data in these sources, you can use generative AI to sort of enter into conversations. You can have this inspiration loop where you've got a question, you don't know how to answer it, but you're just having this conversation with this chatbot, and it's pulling out insights and helping you develop your ideas into like a formulated ask. And so
uh-huh.
each of these components has sort of been independently proven out. It's now a matter of sort of stringing them all together and doing so in a fairly complicated enterprise ecosystem with a lot of tools already there.
Wow. You have a really big vision. Well, that's why you're the CTO. So you're creating some really cool stuff here. So let's back up a little. So, you've got this experience. The other people in your company have a lot of experience already doing development and AI level development. Like, what are some practical areas that, like, if somebody says, "Boy, I like Omar. I think I want to talk to these folks about AI and machine learning." What are some of the practical sort of areas that you look at and say, "Okay, here's kind of an approach that we take, or the problems that we look for to help people solve today?" Like, what kinds of challenges are you helping people with today?
Absolutely. We can take a few personas.
Okay.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's say that you've got John. John is a customer for an so John is a customer for an e-commerce platform, and that e-commerce platform does last mile delivery on groceries. So John's looking to build something for John's looking to host a friend over for dinner, looking to
Uh,
build a menu for that dinner, not really sure what he wants. He opens up the website and he doesn't see sort of what he's looking for. He goes and searches, he adds pasta to his cart, still not sure where he wants to go. But then poof, he sees a product recommendations page. On that product recommendation, he sees pesto, garlic, wine, bread, and he knows, perfect, I'm going to make pesto pasta with garlic bread. That's going to be what I'm doing for dinner. So that is an example of delighting the end user customer with a product recommendation algorithm. We can come in and sort of build that up and down the stack, from doing the data collection on the back end to building the
uh,
AI model in the middle, and then building the front end experience around that. Another persona, one internal to your company, might be Billy, who's a BI analyst. So Billy is charged with building out reports. His company is a logistics company. He needs to know roughly where all of the trucks are at any point in time and where those trucks are going to be stocking up for fuel so that he can sort of allocate budget. Now, Billy needs real-time data to do his reports, and he's been having this issue with data quality. He's been nagging the data lake and the data warehouse team, but they're sort of raising their arms because they don't understand the data. So they're pointing him to the application sensor team. So he's going to them, but there's just this misconnect happening, and Billy's execs who are sponsoring his initiative are not getting the data they need to make strategic decisions. So frustrated, Billy says, I wish we had a better sort of solution. Hatchworks can come in and level up your sort of data engineering pipeline so that we are getting you data that is fresh, that is clear, and well annotated, so that Billy is empowered to understand if an error happened, where that error happened, as well as how fresh the data is, what the quality
uh,
of the data is, and so forth. And then maybe one last one is, let's say Danny is a data scientist. Historically, he's built models, but he hasn't taken any to production yet. It's very early stages for ML at his company, so he's mostly been using rudimentary tools like a Jupyter notebook. How do we help Danny go from Jupyter notebook to production so that the 200 requests per second that come to his website dashboard
yeah,
are now
yeah.
being routed to an AI? That's where we come in and we provide MLOps help. And whichever of these three we do, we'll hopefully use generative AI in the process so that we can expedite things, document things, and just build a better product all around at a fraction of the time.
Those are pretty compelling use cases, I think. So somebody talks to you and says, "You know what? I like these folks. What is the process that you typically go through to just kind of figure out, okay, here's an area that actually makes sense to do something with?" Because I know everybody right now is trying to figure this out. They're letting their team play with it. They're trying to be careful and have some type of responsibility, towards data and that type of thing, governance. But at the same time, I think everybody's kind of looking at where some big wins with this technology, past the personal productivity stage. So it sounds like you all are somebody that can help them get some of these real wins.
I think so. That's what we aspire to do.
Uh-huh.
We're not just a dev shop who goes in and builds. We're a consultancy who makes sure that we're building the right thing the right way. So a lot of what we aspire to do is articulate an ROI for a use case that makes sense. It's very common for companies to come to us with 5 or 6 ideas, feeling some pressure from the board to use
Yeah.
generative AI, and they're
Yeah.
sort of trying to squeeze a round peg in a square hole. What we do in that case is to identify ways that we can either salvage the use cases, prioritize the use cases, or come up with an alternative Gen AI use case that satisfies all of their sort of criteria. So we work with them on that strategy phase.
Oh,
Yeah, we work with them on that strategy phase, and we really target building, relationships and partnerships. And that is more than just building a one-time project that doesn't go anywhere, but
yeah.
it's based on building products with tangible ROIs that actually move the needle on the business. So we help our customers do that. Implicit in that is an analysis of the feasibility of the work. So for each of the use cases they provide, we'll go and ask questions on what's the data availability, how clean is it, is this going to be an end user facing experience or internal one, what are some security regulations that you need to accommodate, and just ask a whole host of questions to sort of pinpoint whether the use case makes sense and where it falls on the prioritized backlog of use cases. We
Yeah.
also offer a workshop for companies that aren't at that stage to help get them up to speed.
So if somebody wants to just be involved with you and start to learn, and you said there's a workshop and some other resources they could just start to have their team learn, and you all can help them with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We publish a lot of thought leadership on our blog and on our Talking AI podcast. We've got a really great episode coming out with Professor Patrick Lynch on the use
Oh,
of AI. Yeah, Professor Patrick Lynch, for folks who don't know, he's the AI lead at Hult University, or Hult International School of Business, I believe is the correct term. And he's been a longtime collaborator of mine. He's a visionary in the field, so his insights are really tangible. We're going to be speaking about an upcoming book chapter that we've both contributed.
oh, great. And what's the name of that? Just so everybody can grab that podcast again. What's it called again?
The Talking AI podcast.
Talking AI. We're going to get to that talking AI concept here because in fact, let's do that now. I want to talk about conversational AI. I want to talk about development with AI, and then I want to talk about some other more people issues because you seem to be tuned in that area too. We haven't even addressed that at all. Conversational AI is really intriguing to me. And you've mentioned this more than one time. So before I get into that, I want to summarize what I've heard really good is that you all are focused on real business issues, and really the key to all of this is data. So that's why you're delving deep into data architecture and coming up with the process of getting this data across the enterprise, connecting the different silos and putting it in this, you call it the mesh. So that way the AI can get access to it so people from different functions can actually get more productive use out of the data. Is that correct? I heard that correctly?
Yeah, you heard that correctly. That's one path. A lot of the times we meet customers wherever they are, and customers typically have got committed usages with certain hyperscalers, certain data lakes or data warehouses. So
Yeah,
we sort of lock into their processes and
I
think
got
how we
you.
can augment them as opposed to replace them. So um, we definitely meet them where they are. What I was saying about data lake warehouses and meshes, this is mostly a personal interest and something that we
That's more
consider
the
with
vision.
greenfield
That's the
accounts when it
vision.
makes sense. Yes.
Yeah. But when you come and help them, that's important clarification. You help them where they are. You help them where they
Absolutely.
are. That's the key point.
Yep, that's entirely accurate. And
Okay.
when we say we start where they are, it's people, processes, and technology, as well as their business landscape. So we look at the holistic picture, we meet them where they are, and then we set a goal together and we take steps to get there as a partnership.
Makes sense. I want to just talk just very briefly about conversational AI. I think that's fascinating. I remember I was in the video game business for a few years. You may not know this, but we did some racing games. And back then it was a branch. And uh, you would have we recorded all the answers, and it was pretty much a branch. But even at the time, it felt like you were having a conversation. But I've talked to some other people in the industry, and they said we're not doing branches here; it's doing something different. So tell me, how does conversation? Just if you could tell it for a layman, it's so intriguing to me that it actually sounds like you're talking to a person, but you're really not, right? What is
Mhm.
that computer actually doing to simulate a conversation? I'm just curious about this.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's two parts to it. One is how you code conversational UX experiences,
Uh,
and then the other one is what's actually going on behind the scenes. I think to bridge the gap, I'm going to talk about how you code them first. So historically, just as you'd mentioned, Alex, it was a tree-based model where you
yeah,
say, if this happens, then do this. If this happens, then do that. And a
yeah,
lot of the times building that workflow relied on you sort of providing intents or you
yeah.
providing um, information around what the user might want to do on this specific application. So it was a lot more of a bounded problem. The app knows how to understand natural language, but very little else. So it understands grammar really well and it's able to sort of detect sentiment and intent. But for the most part, it relies on you to give it feedback onto how a conversation should flow. With this new stage, with this advent of generative AI, the paradigm has entirely shifted when it comes to conversational UI bots. These days, conversational UI bots are a lot more free form. Conversations are non-linear, and you're able to sort of weave in and out with less context loss than you could historically. To give a metaphor, imagine you call up AT&T or a company with an IVR system. I'm not sure AT&T does, but it's like a press one to do this,
Yeah,
press
yeah,
zero to do that. Um, that's not the way conversations work historically. That's navigating a tree structure, but our conversations revisit topics. So I want to pursue one thought with you and then circle back to another topic and then make more progress over here. So our conversations are a little bit more like a jigsaw puzzle where we make
interesting.
some progress in one corner and then go make progress in the middle, return back there, and so on and so forth. So with the new advent of generative based models, provided that you can sort of solve for memory and context and sort of fit that into the token window, what you're able to do to a degree that you've never done before is personalize conversations, maintain sort of uh, a cache of all of the conversations that are actively
Oh,
ongoing with the user, and then
gotcha.
go from there. And so behind the scenes, the way that this works is there's a model that basically has a probability distribution of all of the words that can follow a specific word. So if I were to say the word hello, my, probably what will come next is name, followed by is, followed
Yeah.
by some form of proper noun or name. Um, the model implicitly learns that, as opposed to in the past where we would have had to formulate, okay, this is a noun, this is a proposition, etc. These days with machine learning, we just tell a computer science program, hey, go learn a representation of language. This representation is in multi-dimensional vector space. But the idea with that is that words that are similar are grouped together, and there's calculations that you can do such that you can go from king to queen by minusing male and adding female. So this sort of vector space world is what we sometimes call embeddings or latent space,
Uh,
and that is the sort of heart of modern generative AI based conversational UX.
wow. I tell you, that was a great explanation. I actually think I learned something there. I mean, it's it's so complicated. It's so cool. I think you got a real handle on it. So thank you. Let's switch over to something that I saw in your document. Actually, your not your document, but your profile. I thought was really interesting. Cultivating a culture of innovation, and then we're going to end on product thinking and customer centricity, and anything else that you want to make sure we cover. Uh, Cultivating a culture of innovation. You've mentioned multiple times, because if I look at your specialties and area of interest, it's really in three categories. One is technical areas, generative, derivative development, data science and MLOps, data architecture at scale, and Web3 and decentralized apps. Those are sort of the four key areas. That's all the technical areas. But You also talk about cultivating a culture of innovation and also product thinking and customer centricity. Let's just real quickly touch on each of those because you've mentioned people, process, and technology more than once in this conversation, and we really haven't talked about the people side. What are your sort of themes or lessons on, when you're dealing with something that could be such a significant change and you're working with your people to help other companies? I mean, how do you kind of go about that in terms of creating that culture of innovation?
It's a great question, and it might be helpful to distinguish between the people who innovate and the people who are affected by innovation.
Uh-huh.
And one difference between the two is agency. The people who innovate have the agency to go in and actually make those changes. The people who are impacted by innovation are downstream and they're sort of getting hit by the waves on the shore.
Interesting.
Um, in
Yeah.
creating a culture of innovation, what we wanted to do is allow a platform for everyone in the company, those who want to lead innovation, those who anticipate they will be impacted by innovation, to come together across all functions, across all backgrounds, and innovate. And the idea is if you define innovation as like a pure technical play, you miss out on so much. Innovation, for me, is the art of solving problems in novel ways. And that can be using old technology, could be new technology, could be new processes, etc. And everyone has some way that they're innovating in their own life. Um, for example, with one of our projects at Kin and Carta, we opened up an innovation backlog and people could submit their ideas. We had ideas come from interns, we had ideas come from office management, ideas from senior engineers, and all of them were, given equal weight because they were all true to their own personal experiences. So
Uh-huh.
I think the idea of creating a culture of innovation comes down to wanting to teach people to fish, and secondly wanting to allow people to have agency with the idea that great ideas can come from even the most unlikely source.
That's great. Boy, you really thought about this. It's really interesting. And I know that you've mentioned this in your writings, in your post multiple times. That's why I wanted to kind of touch on that concept because I know you really are interested in that. And uh, the last part that I want to cover from your chart here is product thinking and customer centricity. What do you mean by that when you say that?
A lot of the times, people who approach things from an engineering background lose sight of the big picture. They focus
Uh,
on the solution from a technical standpoint, but they lose track of the people and the processes that this will actually impact. So, in other words, they lose track of the thing as a product, the solution as a product. And in thinking about something as a product, we're basically saying we ought to focus on the people who will be using it, the processes that they will be using it as part of, and the bottom line impact on the business. So I was mentioning earlier that when a customer comes to Hatchworks, we resist the urge to dive right into solutioning and to building, but ask them, all right, so tell us about what you're trying to solve. What is the problem space? What is the niche? What is the user? And what is the ROI? Those are all the sort of product thinking questions that we bring.
yeah,
And in asking about the user, that borders on customer centricity. So a field like AI is primarily tech driven.
yeah.
A lot of the times these developments happen in a lab and are then brought to people in ways that, they're sort of being impacted by without having had a voice to shape. So we firmly believe in Hatchworks in giving users the ability to have a say in the processes that will impact them. So that could be from performing
Oh,
user research and user interviews to performing process mapping sessions to figuring out how to augment people. So depending on if our customer is an end user, an employee internal to a company, a C-suite executive, the way that that customer interacts with the app is different, and customer centricity to us is about being obsessed with guaranteeing that their experience is made better by this technology.
Omar, this has been great. You've actually covered so much ground in such a short period of time. So tell me about some of these big lessons learned because when I see someone like you who is a fast mover, you're affecting I really like what you said. There's the innovator that creates the change, which is in many cases you and your team, and you have the agency, but you're also very conscious about how you're affecting other people through these changes. I really like that. I think that's very cool. So what are some of these big lessons that you learned? Because you're really a thinker as
Mm.
well as a doer. that you've learned that you can kind of share to help other people move fast? Because moving fast is really key these days, right? You've got
Yes.
to be able to get stuff done quickly. So what are some of these lessons learned that you want to share with us?
I think one of the best lessons that I've learned is that complex systems are just a lot of little simple things in aggregation.
Oh,
So take any complex system, you can distill that down to just a number of simple processes that are arranged in a certain way. And so when somebody says stick to the basics or keep it simple, one way to think about that is let's take this complex system and let's dive in deeper to understand how it works at that inner level, at the level of the simplicity. And so whether that's working within an organization, whether it's creating an innovation program, whether it's a piece of software, if you distill it down to the root and then keep it simple, just stick to
hmm,
the basics, stick to what you know, to first principles and build upwards, then you can make systems and solutions that are a lot more manageable and that sort of meet their goals without adding in too much additional overhead. So that's definitely been one of the most important bits of advice that I've ever been given. And I always pay it forward. Keep it simple and stick to the basics.
that's great. You also mentioned something from ceviche, the art of reduction.
Ceviche.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my favorite food is actually a ceviche, and I think it's a metaphor for how I try to work because to get the perfect ceviche, it's about removing any ingredient that you can remove so that you get the perfect balance of the ingredients that remain.
Oh,
You get the most out of these simple ingredients that you have. And so it's a perfect metaphor for eliminating scope for your MVP or your proof of concept. It's also a perfect scope for sticking to the basics and building this wonderful complex dish. So the idea is, ceviche represents the art of reduction, and that art of reduction can be reducing scope, can be reducing complexity to distill down to these simple things, which together are a lot bigger than the sum of their parts.
that's very good. That's very clever. And the last one I want to mention is people first. And you make a point of saying that as one of your key concepts, people first. Is there any comment you want to make on that?
I fully agree. Maybe one thing, it's topical considering that we're in this age of remote work. I just came back from a trip to our Colombia offices in Medellin and Bogota and Costa
Yeah,
Rica,
yeah.
and you just really you can't overestimate the value of in-person face-to-face time. I had the chance to meet the team down there. These are the people who drive delivery for us. They're the engine of our organization. So spending that quality time with them was amazing. Between whiteboard sessions, jamming sessions, someone brought a drum, people brought guitars, had a virtual keyboard. um, the team building, the morale, the exchange of ideas, the sense of collective unity, it's just all so great. And so, just a friendly reminder to everyone, put your people first. And sometimes that means being face to face in front of them.
That's a great concept. Boy, I appreciate you saying that. So let's close with your quote, which I thought was so great. I'm delighted to join the Technology Executives Club, and I'll add as a board of advisor member, and contribute to discussions around enterprise AI adoption, its hurdles, and how to navigate them in order to deliver differentiated end user experience at scale. So I think you've pretty much covered that, but I really like how you focused about helping them deliver end user experiences at scale. And that's a really cool thing because you're really talking about the people. And I talked to so many successful technology executives, CTOs, CIOs, CDOs, whatever you put in the middle. And to almost every single one, they talk about understanding what the end user is really experiencing, what the customer is really experiencing. So, sometimes I think it's really hard for people. They're in this huge building in the office, or they're at their home, and they don't really realize how their company is affecting somebody way at the end, at the delivery point. And I think you've got it. I think you've got it. Which is deliver differentiate end user experience at scale. So, you know, anything you want to add to close it up?
It's been great. I'm really excited to have a series of conversations just like this. This has been a wonderful conversation, and this is a wonderful forum.
Thank
Super
you.
excited to be joining the TEC as this board of advisor, and I'm looking forward to learning as much as I can educate, really. And just have these really valuable conversations with people who are at the vanguard of their orgs, and collectively just exchange notes and grow together on figuring out how we can take AI, deliver it at scale, and build those differentiated user experiences for all.
That sounds great. Well, we're so glad to have you involved. I was so excited when you decided to join because you're one of the what I call the new wave of leaders, technology leaders in the country, if not the world. And I want to get people like you. I'm so happy to have you on the board. So we appreciate you. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so much.
Omar.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All
It's
right.
great to be here.